is really interesting is when you get a face full of jellyfish. You know it. It's just like somebody took a club and hit you.
Well, we baited about 3,500. We'll bait 500 more up today. So, be more hooks than we got gear, so hopefully we'll have enough time to reset.
If you hire a green man, you're asking for trouble. And we haven't got time to break them in here, so we have all experienced people.
That may mean the difference between another set, which may be $100,000 right there.
Commercial fishing plays an important part of the economy of most of our southeast communities. Despite that, however, the closest some of us get to the industry is looking at the boats here in the harbor, buying a fish at the supermarket, or trying to catch our own at the end of a rod and reel. For some who are a bit restless with routine jobs ashore, this commercial fishing life has a certain appeal with its perceived independence, its scenic work location, and the opportunity for huge catches and big paydays. Hello, I'm Scott Foster. Welcome to Rain Country, where this week we're going to go on board several different commercial fishing boats for a more realistic look at this kind of life and a chance to meet some of those who live it.
I like the thrill of it, is the main thing. Of when you go out, you never know what's going to happen. You may go out and your boat may break down on the spot, so that's it for 2 weeks. You may go out and you may have $1,000 day, and you may go out and you might catch nothing. It's a real thrill. It's like getting in a card game every single day that you go fishing.
There are many species of fish commercially caught in southeast waters, and there are even more ways of catching them. But regardless of the species or the catch method, commercial fishing is always a high-stakes gamble. But one southeast fishery seems to surpass all others in terms of risk and the potential take.
Well, the year before last, we had over $30,000 a man, and last year, we had over 10. So, it's up and down. It just depends on how much you get.
Somebody's going to make $50,000 cruise share.
50,000.
Somebody's going to do it.
And what's the other extreme?
I don't expect to make anything less than 5,000. That'd be disappointing. Anything less than 10,000 is going to be disappointing.
These fishermen are participating in a fishery that may last less than 1 hour in a given year. Their prey is herring that are about to spawn. The catch is sold to the Japanese who eat the eggs, or roes it's called, as part of the New Year's tradition.
The Sitka Sound herring sacral fishery takes place each spring in the bays and inlets surrounding Sitka. 52 seine boats, representing 52 commercial limited entry permit holders, start arriving around mid-March.
This year, the quota is so large that, we rehung our seine and went through our hydraulics and did everything that we could to be prepared for this fishery. We can't afford any mistakes.
If you hire a green man, you're asking for trouble. And we haven't got time to break them in here, so we have all experienced people.
10 minutes is long. That may mean the difference between another set, which may be $100,000 right there.
Crews will be adding up imaginary dollars, possibly for weeks to come, much of it on 2-hour standby, until the Alaska Department of Fish and Game gives them the go-ahead to start fishing. In the meantime, most of the crews generally try to put their time to good use.
We're out making practice sets or test sets. Yesterday, a boat was out making a practice set and ripped up pretty bad with the web and the wheel. And one boat, sonar dome, hit the beach, and so there's a lot of just hurry-scurry fixing going on and repairs going on just associated with getting ready for the fishery.
But after the work is done, there's still plenty of time to kill.
You don't do nothing but sleep and eat and roam around town.
The crews of 60 or more processing ships are in the same situation and easily outnumber the fishermen. The influx of close to 1,000 people in such a small community gives a sharp boost to the economy. And that's not counting the jobs created at the onshore processors. At one of those, facts and figures relating to the condition of the herring are gathered daily. It helps Fish and Game personnel decide when to open the fishery. Bob DeYoung holds the unenviable position of making that decision.
Okay, well, every day we have volunteer purse seine fishermen go out that are involved in this fishery, and they make a set. And then we would take a sample from that set with a dip net. And then they would release the set, they would release the fish unharmed. And then we would take the sample back to Sitka Sound Seafoods, where there are a number of Japanese technicians, and the Japanese technicians would work up the samples. They would analyze the samples for roe content and other information that might be useful as far as making a decision on when we fish or not.
The male-female ratio, the percentage of fish in different age groups, the quantity of herring available, and the percentage of roe per body weight are some of the factors that affect the outcome of the fishery. As the samples are worked up, representatives from the various fishing boats and processors carefully take notes to aid them in their search for the best fish and in price negotiations. Once the data is collected and analyzed, they all meet with DeYoung to discuss the latest information, some of which he and a dozen other biologists have been collecting by aerial observations and other means since 6 a.m.
I would classify the north then as we're really into major spawning right now, and we're probably in the, I don't know if we're on the downhill side, but it's pretty much taken off there.
The Department of Fish and Game's main job is to make sure there's adequate escapement, but the fishermen and processors have to worry about quality. The price per ton can vary dramatically, depending on roe percentages. It's possible for the herring to spawn without ever reaching the desired percentage. The timing of the fishery is crucial, with each permit worth $500,000 to $600,000 and the value of a boat and gear worth possibly that much or more and adding up to well over $1 million. The pressure is intense. Consequently, DeYoung gives the permit holders as much freedom as he feels is possible to come to their own conclusions.
I think more and more fishermen and processors are coming to grips with the fact that we're not going to get 10% fish this year, and we're looking at something like 7% or maybe even less than that if you know, it holds up true that the fishery would be something less than what we were sampling.
The processors are offering half of what they're offering some of the other areas that we've seen, in the neighborhood of 500, say, a ton for this fish. So if we're looking at 9,200 tons at $1,000 a ton, it's considerably different than looking at 9,200 tons at half that price.
When it became obvious the situation for this season was abnormally bad, the permit holders were forced to come up with some creative solutions. In a past year, they'd formed a cooperative. Only a few boats actually fished, and they shared the profits equally among the others. Many of the highly competitive and independent fishermen had been embarrassed at having been part of such a socialistic agreement. This year, after on-the-spot negotiations between permit holders and processors, they decided on another type of agreement that they called a joint venture. Under this plan, each permit holder was allotted an equal share of the 9,200-ton quota, and they independently negotiated with the processors for the best price they could wrangle. The result of both these agreements was to take the emphasis off catching as many fish as they could, as fast as they could, and allow them to sift slowly through the schools of herring, catching and releasing those of lesser quality, and keeping the more valuable ones sampling as they went.
We're not going to count, we're just going to crack and dump. When you get a female, okay, try to get it so it's cracking right here instead of back here. Right, it's easy. I know.
This modified approach kept some boats searching for the right fish for about 2 weeks, a far cry from the short opening that was originally predicted. But in spite of that, things at first didn't appear to the casual observer to be all that different from the earlier descriptions of what it should have looked like.
Boats going every which way, skiffs, planes. The air will be full of 35, 40 spotter planes.
The spotter's job is just basically to spot herring for the boat, for the seiner that he's working for. And what they're looking for is schools that, and then they radio into the boat and say, well, there's a school in such and such a bay, and they pinpoint where it is, and the boat would go over there and make a set on it.
It's bedlam, it really is. You'd think there was a fire somewhere.
boats ram each other sometimes, although not in the last few years. Shootings, you know, not at people but at boats, and it gets rough. You're all friends in town, then you go fish, and you come back and you're friends, but when you're fishing, it's competition.
The potential jackpots involved in any kind of commercial fishery elevate competition to an art form. One of the key ingredients needed to hone the competitive edge is secrecy. Yet selective sharing of secrets is just as important. As much as an individual fisherman doesn't want the rest of the fleet to know when he's in the fish, he also doesn't want to be left out of the action when he can't find any. As a compromise, he may forge an alliance with a small, select group of friends.
I'm over on the Burma Road, Steve. Did I make a mistake?
Not that I can tell. Still nothing happened here. High drift's coming down. Really, I saw one sockeye splash out in the middle about 10 minutes ago, but that's been it.
Okay, we'll let you know. It doesn't look very good here, though, so we'll let you know in a while.
Because of the indiscreet nature of radio transmissions, many fishermen develop codes to disguise their information. Others, like Jack and his 4 confidants, use a more sophisticated technique.
Well, it's a scrambler. It costs $400 or so to install in the radios, and they're awkward. We have a hard time understanding each other at times. It's pretty valuable to know what's going on in various areas. I mean, you can make a good week out of a poor one. One of the guys might run in a fish. And also save a lot of extra running. You have to, if you're all alone, you're running back and forth across the inlet and up and down and all around. Where this way, you know, you cut that down by 4. Only thing about it is if you do happen to run into fish, then you have 4 guys fishing on them instead of just yourself. And we'll do anything to have a spot by ourselves catching fish, of course. But that is very rare. It's not uncommon in some areas to find 50 boats fishing one point, and it's pretty congested. But that would be 3 and 4 and 5 sets off the beach. And it's also we sometimes wait 3 and 4 and 5 hours for a set, which is it's past my tolerance. With the unwritten laws, you give a net length and distance from boat to boat or net to net. If you're picking the net, you've lost all rights to the set. If you're setting at the time before the other guy starts setting, you maintain the set, the location. We also have lines, and we'll fish the line, and that right now the line we'll fish is the 25-minute line. You set your net out, it's 25 minutes, and then the next guy sets in front of you. But I've seen guys break those laws, and nothing can be done about it. What can you do? You can't board the man. You can't do anything. You just have to put up with it. But then they kind of ostracize the fella. And then of course there's shouting matches, yelling, and sometimes ramming. There's been a few guns brandished too, and that's a terrible mistake. 50% of fishing is done in town, of course. Is maintaining your boat and gear and all this stuff. And the boats are so complex now, especially now. The hydraulics and the electronics are beyond most of us, but most of us do our own hydraulic work and a lot of the engine work and the maintenance and upkeep on the boat. We just can't afford it any other way.
Well, we've been working 7 days a week. 3 fishing and then 3 or so back in town here. You come into town and we used to sell fish the day we get here. Today we sold a day later this time. Then you clean the boat, and that's a 3 or 4 hour job. And a lot of guys go home after that, if their net's in good shape, or sometimes even if their net's not in good shape, they just go home and then we'll start back on the next opening. But Jack takes good care of his net, and so when I get a chance, I'll help him out with that. But right now, we've been working on hydraulics and a few minor problems with the boat.
Just when the captain and crew have everything shipshape, it's back to the fishing grounds where hardcore gill netters often fish 24 hours a day during the 3 days or so a week that they're allowed to fish. Their only sleep might be occasional cat naps taken between sets.
Most of the time, there's very little rest all the time you're fishing. And if you are resting, you shouldn't be. If you're going to fish, you don't get any rest. It's constant. You're alert all the time and watching all the time, and you're watching the net. You're watching everything. You're listening to your partners. You're watching the boat traffic, where they're moving and congregating, and you're looking for openings to set in. You're watching the tides. You're watching the trash drifting around. What you're trying to avoid. For corks bobbing or moving up and down, and watch for fish splashing in the net. Just there's no use sitting on a spot there for hours where there's nothing going on. Then even you tend to net that you try to avoid logs. You may have to drag logs out. Sea lions, sharks, even occasional porpoise, they cause a lot of damage. And there's always a shift in tide that will throw the net on the beach, and that could be the loss of the net. And nets are not cheap. It's probably $2,000 out there. Last week a tug came down with a couple log rafts that towing right through the whole fleet. The whole fleet had to run out, get away from them.
One would think that the competition and all the work and potential crises we've already heard about that a gill netter has to deal with would be enough for anyone to have to put up with. But unfortunately, the supply of nuisances never ends.
What is really interesting is when you get a face full of jellyfish. You know it. It's just like somebody took a club and hit you when you get it in the eyes. I've been temporarily blinded for over half an hour. I just had to shut the boat down and I just couldn't see anything. Just like I'd been hit. It's run me right out of this inlet at times. I've seen guys put on wetsuits, masks, everything, trying to avoid them. And then they got the flies that landed on you, and you can't hit them on account of the jellyfish, so that's the way it goes.
It's unlikely that many professional fishermen would admit that the tense, difficult, and sometimes dangerous conditions that come with the business are part of the attraction. But it seems likely that it's all part of the mix that sets fishing aside from more mundane occupations and makes it a livelihood that some Southeasterners have found worthy of passing down from generation to generation. Such is often the case in Petersburg, where many of the residents are descendants of Norwegian immigrants who have passed down a strong fishing heritage that was begun in the 1880s.
24-year-old Mark Hofstad is a third-generation heir apparent to that heritage. His grandfather, Richard Hofstad, emigrated to the Seattle area as a young man, got married, and then moved to Petersburg, where he joined the ranks of ex-compatriots who started it all. Richard's son, Albie, Mark's father, is now one of Petersburg's most successful and respected fishermen. Mark was 8 years old when he first started fishing with his father. He was 20 when Albie made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
My daddy went down to the Fish Expo in Seattle, and I called him, and he decided to get a new boat. He asked me if I wanted to buy this one. I said, you betcha. So that's how I ended up getting my first boat.
The Hofstads are both salmon and herring seiners mostly, but like most fishermen, they occasionally branch out into other fisheries. When we caught up with them and their crews near the fishing grounds, they were preparing for the first of only 2 24-hour halibut openings for the year. They would be using a bottom fishing technique called long lining. Mark's crew alone would set out 34 sections of line called skates, a total of approximately 12 miles of line and lots of hooks.
Well, we baited about 3,500. We'll bait 500 more up today. So be more hooks than we got gear, so hopefully we'll have enough time to reset. Well, I think I was in the 7th grade, talked me into getting involved in this fishery. So I went out and bought 10 skates of halibut gear. It was back when they had 7-day openings. So he and I and another person went out and fished the 7 days and The next year is down to like 5 days and 4 days. And then last year he quit going out with me, so I've been pretty much calling all the shots myself. It's kind of nice when he's out there with me to help me make sets and plan things out on charts. And, you know, there's a lot more to going out there and just setting your gear out, and he showed me quite a bit. He comes up with some pretty helpful hints every now and then, and I pick stuff up that I let him know about too, so it works both ways. We get along great, but we have our deals. I don't like his music and he doesn't like mine. I want to do one thing, he wants to do another. It's probably like most father-son relationships, I'm sure, but we get along great. Well, it can be pretty hard work, especially if you get into fish. You got 24 hours and you're usually up for 2 days, no sleep. I think the hardest part is probably dressing the fish. If you're getting a lot, it probably takes a lot at most out of you. But if you got a good crew, like I do, you know, it makes things so much easier. You know, one got a weak link, it affects everybody, and you have to pick up their weight and slack, and it just makes it hard for everybody. In one day, it's more of a mental strain than anything else, because it's such a hit or miss deal.
It's easy to tell when you're talking to Albie how proud he is of Mark, who now fishes further afield than his father ever has.
And Mark, he just came down from up Lucian's, and they had over 1 million pounds of crab.
But along with the parents' pride comes concern, well justified in this case, since fishing is the most dangerous industry in the nation.
When he's up in Dutch Harbor and fishing crab up there, I do worry. Every year there's so many boats lost up there. And I'll be glad when he's through fishing up there, come back down here and fish.
But Norwegian fishermen don't dwell much on the risky aspects of the business. It's doubtful any of them would be doing it if they didn't figure they would be at it for a long time.
I think I want to just keep going until I can't walk around the deck anymore. I really enjoy fishing.
There's a lot of issues that are up between fish farming and the Taiwanese, and it's hard to say, you know. Fishermen just need to quit bickering and get together and try to plan for a better future and work some of these bugs out of our fisheries. I think if we all get together and work things out, fishing will be great for a long, long time.
Even in the best of fishing years, and in spite of legends of fortunes made, the majority of people who fish for a living are more likely to make out financially much the same as power troller Joe Craig, who fishes out of Elfin Cove.
I don't get rich. I basically, you know, make my state permit payment and pay for my family's living expenses during the year. And there's no profit, you know. I don't think there ever will be, really. It's maintain your boat, and I don't know what I'm going to do when I retire. I don't think I'm going to have any big retirement fund to go on, so I guess I'll fish for a number of years more and then play from there. A 9-to-5 job, you know, you have an exact paycheck every 2 weeks. It's going to be an exact amount of money. And that's nice because then you can buy things on time and make your payments. But it'd seem awful boring to do that. There's no thrill to that at all. I think you'd be ahead of the game, you know, financially to do that. I'm sure I could go to Juneau and be a bureaucrat and probably make far more money than I'd make fishing, but I wouldn't have as much fun.
The first year that I started fishing by myself, just before I bought the boat that I'm fishing now, I had borrowed one of the local skiffs, and I was fishing with rod and reel out at Soapstone, and a couple of humpback whales leapt out of the water at the end of my fishing pole, threw my boat all up and all around. It was great.
Few women in the fishing industry own and operate their own boats. Deborah Page is one of the exceptions. She started hand trolling in 1977. Her eventful first year gave her an appreciation of the type of non-monetary rewards that are at the heart of making many people choose fishing as a way of life.
We see lots. Killer whales and sea otters are just wonderful. There's a sea lion rookery at North Island in one place and a seal rookery that we pass and in another area that we fish here in the passes. And it's fun. It's real helpful with my child on the boat. Keeps him entertained watching all the things that are happening in the water around. You're really doing something that's Alaskan, and you're really doing what the old ideal that a lot of us moved up here to do was, you know, to be in the outdoors, to be in the wilderness, and to be part of it, and that's wonderful. I'm real glad that I can be part of that.
There are few jobs that offer more diversity than commercial fishing. From the serene moment of scenic beauty to the full fury of a stormy sea. From bonanza to bankruptcy. We'll be back again next week on Rain Country and fish for some more diversity in our Southeast lives. I'm Scout Foster. Good luck on your fishing.